Good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on Nationwide at 5. I'm Cliff Hughes.
Good afternoon, listeners. Good afternoon, Cliff. I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And it's raining cats and dogs across several parts of the island, including the corporate area. So be careful on the roads. If you're making your way home in the traffic, add some time to your schedule because the water is on the road. And you know what happens when it rains in this city, this corporate area of ours, it becomes a huge parking lot. So add some time to your schedule.
Yeah, proceed with caution. In the cover story this afternoon, Transport Minister Daryl Vaz has announced a ban on ride-sharing companies. He says the ban will be with immediate effect, pending legal advice. Minister Vaz was making his contribution to the sectoral debate in the House of Representatives this afternoon.
I have today written to the both telecom providers on a letter from the Assistant or Deputy Commissioner of Police indicating the concerns for national safety of our citizens. And I would like to state that this matter is not today that it came up because of the incident. I actually took a cabinet submission to cabinet 3 weeks ago to discuss this very matter because of the complaints that I was getting from commuters and also from industry players who are playing by the rules and paying their fees for their license, etc. And these apps are undercutting them both in fear without any form of background checks and no monitoring by the Transport Authority. Madam Speaker, I want to indicate that my recommendation as of today, which will obviously have to be vetted for legal purposes, is that a ban on all of those ride-sharing apps with immediate effect until such time as we can come to the table and work out properly how these apps will be regulated in terms of making sure that safety, background checks of the drivers are done not only by the app, the ride-share apps, but by the Jamaican authorities, whether it be the police or the Transport Authority or whoever. And I make no apologies.
Daryl Vaz, Minister of Transport. His announcement today follows the disappearance and killing of 29-year-old primary school teacher Danielle Anglin. Miss Anglin has been missing went missing since on Monday, May 13. She was last seen on her way to work sometime after 5 that morning.
Miss Anglin, who lives in Hellshire, St. Catherine, reportedly took an InDrive taxi. Now, listeners, skeletal remains believed to be those of Miss Anglin were found in Salt River, Clarendon, yesterday.
Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of crime, Fitz Bailey, says the police are awaiting forensics to confirm the find. He says investigators are frustrated by the absence of a local representative of the ride-sharing company.
Before Miss Anglin, a driver was reported missing after his vehicle was abandoned and an investigation was launched last year. The incidents have sparked concerns about the safety of InDrive and its users. We have now joining us the Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, Daryl Vaz. Good afternoon, Minister.
Afternoon, gentlemen. Afternoon to your listeners.
Good afternoon, and let's get right into it. I gather you have a short time with us. What are the legal issues that will have to be sorted out before the ban takes effect?
So, Cliff, I'm not sure whether or not they are, but out of an abundance of caution, based on the fact that I received a letter today from DCP Fitz Bailey as Commissioner in charge of crime, advising of the situation and indicating that it is definitively a national security risk. On the basis of that letter, I have written to the two telecom providers and sent out the letter today, asking them to deal with the matter in terms of blocking those apps with immediate effect until such time as we can come up with a interim solution to allow for those who are more than willing to cooperate and to come up with policies that will be in the best interest of the regulators and the public that use these apps. So I want to make it very clear that I know that technology, especially among the younger generation, is the way in which they operate. I'm Minister of Telecommunications, so I'm very aware of that as well. But we will find solutions for those who are already at the table, which include local transport operators who have designed their own apps,
Right.
and are in discussions with the Transport Authority in relation to how they can be regulated, most importantly, for safety, number one, and secondly, to make sure that they are meeting the guidelines set out in terms of fare structures, etc., that exist for those local companies and operators in the transport sector.
Let's distinguish them. Uber, you said in the Parliament, in the House of Representatives this afternoon, has been at the table, yes? And they have a fairly more advanced security architecture than, say, InDrive. Why didn't you make a distinction between Uber and the rest of them? Why
All right.
wholesale ban?
I tell you why. Very simply. This morning, obviously, before I received the letter from the police, my focus was on InDrive. When I got the letter from the police, they're asking that all of them be banned until such time as they can satisfy the safety and security risk. Uber, I summoned them about a month ago, and their vice president, 2 or 3 of them came to Jamaica. And we met, had a very good discussion. They explained to me and to the team how they operated and how they did their own internal background checks in terms of before they allowed persons to utilize their app.
Right.
The problem with that is that the Jamaican authorities are not involved in that, and they did make mention that they were prepared to share that information, which was a start. And the truth is, Cliff, that there's no country, responsible country or responsible government that is going to allow these apps to go on a frolic of their own without making sure mechanisms are there to protect the citizenry.
Except, Minister, they have been on a frolic of their own for at least 2 years now. Your opposition counterpart said that this is just a knee-jerk reaction. How do you escape that criticism?
Truth be told, I accepted that when I just left Parliament and heard it when I was in Parliament when he said so. And the fact of the matter is that this is a matter that did, and it's not new, in relation to the fact that there was these apps and drive share that were not regulated, and I'm a part of the government, so I take responsibility for that. What I can say from I came May last year, became Minister of Transport, the transport operators and of course the steering committee that I formed has brought this issue to my attention, and it has been a very, very sore topic for them in relation to the easy access for people to be able to compete against them when they are paying fees and insurances and all sorts of things to play by the rules. So, as I said earlier in my presentation, this move today is not a knee-jerk to what happened last night. As I said before, this has been on the steering committee agenda, properly discussed, have meetings specifically towards this, called in the Uber people, can't find anybody for InDrive. And the bottom line is, I took a cabinet submission 3 weeks ago to cabinet to ban it.
And the ban includes those local ride-sharing companies as well?
Right now, as it stands now, based on the police recommendation, security assessment, all are banned. There's a meeting, and a meeting was scheduled from before this happened with the local rideshare apps, which have been created by innovative transport operators. We are far advanced in those discussions. There's a meeting tomorrow, and I'm sure coming out of that meeting, we will be further upping. So what you will see over the next few weeks into months is obviously those who are prepared to sit and work out and sit at the table with us. We will work out to make sure that we can get them back on as quickly as possible. But those who I call rogue, based on the fact that there's no representative in Jamaica, and there's no way, it's not only Fitzbailey who has been trying to contact them. From the last 3 months, we've been trying to find representatives for InDrive or 1 or 2 others that are less used, because we want to deal in it in a holistic manner. I don't want to just cherry pick. We need to deal with it as a policy. Regulation definitively is lagging and will take time, but in the meantime, we can find ways and agree on processes that can happen now to allow for the government to be a part of the due diligence of the drivers.
But
The young entrepreneurs who have used technology to start their business, the local companies, they say this is really a heavy-handed approach, that you brought down the hammer without first even trying to regulate them.
So as I said, I have to go based on what the recommendation. If the letter was structured differently that I received, then I would have acted differently. But based on how the letter was structured and what the police were requesting of me, I had to act in that accordance with that request.
Okay.
And as I say, it is. So we are already at the table with those locals. So I just asked them.
But in effect, Minister, what does this really mean? Yeah, you don't have you don't have no hand, yeah, to impose or enforce this. How is this going to be enforced?
The telecom companies have been asked and directed to block the access to those apps through the telecom providers, which is Digicel and Cable and Wireless Flow, for which everybody else works through. Mm-hmm. So all the other smaller companies that people use their services for internet, etc., have to go through the two main players.
Got you.
And I've already spoken to them. I've written them, and they are already dealing with their technical people. And based on my discussions with Jasser today, which used to be under me, which is now under the OPM, they told me exactly what the steps are to do it, and it's a matter of hours. It's not a matter of days.
I hear you.
Once they comply, which I know they will, based on a ministerial directive, it means that nobody will be able to access those apps until such time as we release them.
Okay.
And that is to protect the lives and safety and the industry that employs thousands of Jamaicans who feel that they are at risk because of unfair competition.
And if they use a VPN to get around the block?
Look here, all I can say to you is whatever needs to be done to make sure that it is done must be done. So well, I will leave that to the telecom companies and my technical people to find a solution.
Very well. Minister Vaz, thank you so much for your time.
All right, and I just said to those that are affected, both in terms of who uses it and who have set up these platforms, this is not something that is not going to stay on the top of my agenda till we have a resolution, because I understand the impact that it will have on law-abiding citizens.
We're going to be joined by the Managing Director of the Transport Authority, Ralston Smith. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Cliff. Good afternoon to all the listeners out there in Radioland.
What role does the Transport Authority now play in the enforcement of this directive from your minister?
Well, the minister has indicated that the ban will stay in effect until a proper regulatory framework is put in place. So the role of the Transport Authority is to work with the ministry and its legal team in establishing the regulatory framework around which ride-hailing entities would be able to provide the services to our commuters here in Jamaica.
Now, as it is now, what pertains? Is there any form of regulation at all?
No. Ride-hailing is a phenomenon that has somehow taken root in Jamaica for some time now, and I think if you look at where we're coming from in terms of legislation to deal with stuff like lottery scamming, it's something that really came up on us. And one of the things that we must recognize is that this ride-hailing thing is a matter of using technology, and there's no way to step back from that. In fact, it is the way to go. The ministry, the minister, and the Transport Authority support the use of technological solution to improve the overall efficiency and delivery of public transportation. But it must be done within the ambit of safety standards. And the concern that the regulator has with these ride-hailing platforms is their inability, insofar as I've looked at a few of them, to determine the fit and proper nature of vehicles, one, providing the service, and two, the drivers themselves providing the service. Recognizing that the drivers ought to be one trained and screened to determine whether or not they have any kind of conviction, whether or not they commit any kind of criminal offense, in particular rape and other heinous crimes.
But Mr. Smith, I recall from as far back as 2021, when I just came to this station, we did a series of stories on the introduction of Uber in Jamaica. And at the time, the Transport Authority essentially issued some threats to the drivers. Don't participate in this. Don't do this. This is not regulated. You've had all this time now, and there's been no move, as far as we can tell, to regulate these services. Why have we waited?
Well, I can't speak to 2021 and what obtained that time, notwithstanding the fact that I was a part of the authority but not occupying this particular position. You will also recall that the minister has indicated moments ago that since he took over the portfolio of transport in May, that we have been active in terms of having the discussions with the ride-hailing entities, in particular Uber, who came to the table. And we're in the process, he himself as minister brought to cabinet a proposal in terms of a policy position for treatment of ride-hailing entities. And we're at the stage where we are conducting, fine-tuning all our research and putting together what we believe will be a robust regulatory framework to treat with the whole matter of safety and security for all users.
And will this regulatory framework require any change to existing law?
It will require, in terms of the Transport Authority regulation and not the Act, because the Act gives the minister the power to make regulation. So already grounded in the Transport Authority Act is the power of the minister to promulgate regulation. So what we'll be moving towards is to do those amendments in terms of the regulation and then create and establish a framework for the ride-hailing enterprises.
And how do you then, once you have those regulations in place, how do you explain that now to the traditional operators who say they're going to undercut us in terms of the fares that they charge?
And that's why the consultations are important, because one of the things we want to do is to ensure that these ride-hailing entities that they subscribe to, they prescribe fare arrangement as per our laws. So here in Jamaica, public passenger services are provided within the prescription of fare regime. And the extent to which persons would undercut those would mean that the service is being provided. There's an unfair competition that has been offered. So it is important for us to have the conversation, to examine the existing laws and to seek to establish not just the laws around which these ride-hailing entities will operate, but the framework and the mechanism by which they will be measured.
So do I understand you correctly? You are saying that you would essentially be asking them to come in compliance with the existing fare structure that the traditional services have to abide by?
That is correct.
And you don't think you can get pushback on that?
It's not
because that's part of why these services are attractive. I can tell you, for university students, for young professionals, is that it offers them a cheaper alternative.
And whilst we understand that, we are saying that the legal arrangement in Jamaica is that we operate by a prescribed fare structure. And any entity, any person providing services on our shores would have to subscribe to the prescribed fare structure that exists.
And what of the locals? Yeah, how many companies do you know as an authority to be operating locally?
Well, one of the things, Cliff, is that these ride-hailing platforms, they are fast emerging, and we don't have the full set of data where the numbers are concerned. So one of the things we'll be doing immediately following today's sectoral presentation is to do a call on all ride-hailing entities out there that they should contact the Transport Authority so that we can be in touch to start the conversation in terms of the way forward.
Okay.